growing up, I've always wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to. I want to go to the moon. I love astronomy, and then it definitely changed. It definitely changed.
Welcome to Innovation Somalia. I am your host, Abdullahi. I'm coming to you from Columbus, Ohio. I'm really excited. I have today Mohamed Haji, who is from Columbus, Ohio.
Correct.
Grew up here.
Correct. Yep.
So tell me a little bit about that.
Came to the U.S. In 1999 when I was 5 years old.
Okay.
And yeah, we came through New York, went down, to North Carolina, stayed with my aunt for the summer.
Okay.
We came around July, and then
Where in North Carolina?
Raleigh, North Carolina.
Oh, okay.
Raleigh, yeah. And then we came to Columbus early August, I would say, shortly before the school year began.
Okay.
Yeah, and we were in the north side Columbus ever since.
What's it like growing up here in Columbus?
It was a very tight-knit community here,
Okay.
especially the Somali community
Okay.
here in Columbus is very tight-knit. So I mainly grew up in a lot of the Somali areas like Capitol Park and
Okay.
Providence Glen. So,
Okay.
I was around Somalis my entire life.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic. I really enjoyed it. Obviously kind of growing up together, you kind of grow up with it's like the ummah, the one, the united. So it was always fantastic to, obviously, and I still have my childhood friends to this day since I met them in '99.
Nice.
Till this day,
nice,
so
nice,
it's always
nice.
beautiful.
A lot of people grew apart, but
Yeah.
I'm glad you were able to keep that.
I'm definitely blessed in that sense for sure.
So walk me through, what's like, especially in high school,
Yeah.
what's like going through in high school?
Biggest challenge is that really, you face in high school. It's kind of the balance between not only the Somali culture and your religion, Islam, and also the American culture. So it's kind of like a little bit of a clash, and you kind of have to make it work. Which is why I think, you yourself, obviously, you're a parent and you're a father of
Right.
of three beautiful kids, mashallah. My mom also had to my mom and my dad had to kind of deal with the pressures of, kind of adapting as well to the American culture, or trying to be more inclusive to the American culture.
Yeah.
It was definitely kind of understanding, what to do, kind of how to be also, kind of one with your faith and also, with your culture, but also trying to be inclusive to the American culture.
Now,
So
were
it
you
was-
given a lot of rooms to kind of sort of make a decision on your own? You get a
Yeah,
feel
for sure.
it?
Thankfully, my brothers and I were very close,
Uh-huh.
and we always hung out with one another, so we'd always look after each other. So we did have a bit more freedom kind of growing up, because my mom would know if one is here,
Yeah,
they're all
the
with
other-
each other. And then obviously with the rest of my friends, we're all kind of rolling in a real big group, so it's a gang of us always running around.
Nice.
So yeah, I definitely grew up with a lot of freedom. I know some individuals are growing very sheltered. So no, I definitely didn't grow up very sheltered. I can tell you that much for sure.
So where did you go to college?
I went to the Ohio State University for my
The
undergrad.
Ohio State University.
The Ohio State University for my undergrad.
What did you study?
I studied finance and marketing at Ohio
okay.
State.
Okay.
And then for my graduate program, I studied at Ashland University. I studied data analytics.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So what do you do now?
So I'm still working at the job I worked for once I got out of college,
Okay.
which is a chemical information company.
Okay.
And so I'm working in the sales and technology department essentially.
I wish we had a huge voice for as far as the entrepreneur goes, because I don't know about you, but I sense that there is no a one voice for the entrepreneur here in Columbus. Do you feel that way?
Yeah. I think it's I actually kind of I was just I'm on social media, so I seen this one thing, and I seen a kind of an image where someone's like, whenever you're working at a new job or you get a new job, people are just loving it, so on and so forth. But once you kind of start your own company, people aren't maybe as supportive as you'd think they'd
That is
be,
true.
Which is odd. It is very, very confusing. And there's so many different avenues you can go in regards to kind of starting your own business,
Yeah.
trying to be an entrepreneur. So I guess it all depends. I guess you
That
really
is
have
true.
to
That
kind of
is
make
true.
some of those connections.
Yes. I mean, no, because it has an advantage and a disadvantage. It's
For sure.
kind of a challenge in that. I wish we were more connected.
Yeah,
I wish we were
definitely.
more in a one voice spoken.
For sure.
I think we're in a different groups, because I think there's people that people like you that grew up here and people like me that came here in their lives.
Correct.
So it's a little bit of a clash on that end, in a sense of not knowing what you guys' vision is, and
Yeah.
versus and the way that we think that you guys ways you headed, it's a little bit different. So
Yeah, and I know there's especially going to college, a lot of Somali parents are like, man, we want you to major in these things.
Yeah.
Whether it's technology, whether it's medicine, whether it's law, these are the major things. This is how you give yourself a successful life here in the U.S. essentially. And a lot of individuals went that path. I was one of the individuals who kind of went that path as well.
Okay.
But there's so many individuals that are very creative. There's a lot of creatives now, and because it's kind of just hobbies that they're picking up, but then they're going on and doing work in that. So it kind of opens up the eyes of a lot of the older generation, the older Somali parents, and so it's really growing in that sense. So I think we're doing a good job. Obviously, it's still we've only been here maybe 20 years, 30
give or take,
give or take,
25 years.
25 years. So it's still obviously that that shift is still kind of going towards there. But yeah, I think we're definitely progressing.
I think we're in the tipping point now, because I feel like people like you that who came here when they were 5 years old, and people that like same age of you that were born here.
Yeah.
I think they are getting to the point where they are stepping up like in a leadership role, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So that itself is challenging in the sense of where they feel like the community should go, and versus that where the elder people feel like where the community should go.
Definitely.
So I wish hopefully down the road there will be like some sort of like a smooth transition that kind of sort of points you guys in the right direction.
That's definitely best case scenario for sure.
Best case scenario for sure. So now going to college, and the major that you picked, was that for you? Do you enjoy it? Do you enjoy what you're doing right now?
I do enjoy what I'm doing right now. Obviously, I'd love to. My dream job is to work in the sports industry. That's definitely where I'm going, and obviously now looking.
Where in the sports industry?
So I'd like to work in the front office of a sports organization. Any of the big sports here in the U.S., whether it's soccer, basketball, football, so on and so forth.
What would you be doing with them?
So so I'd like to kind of work with like the day-to-day operations. You know what I mean, and kind of helping build a team that can win a championship. That's my dream, my goal right now. To one day work there, and I hope inshallah I'm able to get there.
And your background, like what will be your specific job on that?
So because I have a little bit of background in marketing and finance, and also obviously data analytics, which is huge right now in regards to the sports industry.
It is.
Where it's very data focused. I think I have kind of some of the knowledge in that sense, but now I just have to apply it into the sports industry. Just kind of learning, what's a useful statistic that they'd want to know. What's a useful kind of, whether it's marketing advice or whether it's something financial in regards to what's kind of best for them economically, and so I think I can kind of bridge the gap between that essentially.
Let's explore that a little bit.
For sure.
Data analytics. When we say data, and apply that to a personal information.
Okay.
First name, last name, address.
Correct.
What can you do with that data?
So, so in regards to that, a lot of that is kind of just it's like demographics is what you're mentioning essentially. But a lot of that data can be used in regards to advertising. Is a very big point that individuals like to use, especially now with the data that's being presented out in the world. Through technology. A lot of individuals just sign up for things regardless. Oh, I get a nice 10% discount from this. Why don't I go ahead and sign up for it? You're kind of selling your data at that point to a lot of these organizations, these companies, and those companies essentially are using those data. They're going to sell it off to other companies to try and better, try and provide you an experience, whenever you're online, or advertise, trying to show you things where you're like, oh, you know what, this kind of suits who I am. Let's say you're a middle-aged man from Idaho, and so on and so forth. And you're like, oh, well, I'd love to hunt. And all of a sudden you get, things from hunting websites, whatever the case may be. So it's very interesting.
So the marketing groups, where do they get those data? Is there like an individual, other companies that provide that data to them? So the data mine is where we get into right now.
Correct.
So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So in regards to a lot of the data mining, you can get it from some companies. Some companies mainly focus on data mining and sell that information to, let's say a company that wants to sell you a product. But also I've noticed that, even in my organization and a lot of organizations have decided to actually just make their own data department. They're making, they're adding more jobs essentially.
Like a data integrity or something.
Data analytics and insights is what a lot of the organizations are calling it, where they have individuals specifically focused on that task to be able to try to generate new business, or even work with what they have now and how can they best improve it. And so it's definitely growing, and it's kind of like the next big.
How do you see it? Like, what is it going to go from here on out?
So just kind of reading upon it and so on and so forth. And I've even seen now where there's a lot of companies now. There's some companies now where they're actually kind of encouraging individuals to kind of take their own private data and to be able for the individual to benefit off it for themselves, so they can try and sell their own data, so the individual like myself can make money off of the data that I'm able to provide.
Here in Columbus, right? So there's a large population of Somali.
Correct.
That's like a huge data.
Yeah.
So nobody is looking into that. Nobody is trying to figure that out, how to best position it. Utilize it for that.
Yeah.
So that's what I was trying to get to. Like, how do you utilize it, that information?
Yeah. So in regards to data analytics, there's a lot of individuals, whether it's engineers, whatever the case may be, who are able to data engineers that are able to get the data. And then there's another part of data and analytics where you have to be able to analyze it and essentially present it to someone in layman's terms. And so in that portion, that's how individuals are able to kind of translate that data. Because, you have all this information, it doesn't matter unless you're able to kind of translate it, unless you're able to kind of act on it.
Right.
And so I think that's one of the issues that we're seeing now, where because it's such a big Somali population here, maybe a lot of companies aren't utilizing that information.
Aren't utilizing that.
Yeah.
There are a lot of young populations.
Correct.
And I think they are experiencing some challenges.
Yeah.
Especially in the ones that don't have the right opportunities.
Yeah.
There is you hear young Somali overdosed. You hear Somalia shooting one another sometimes.
Yeah.
It is really challenging.
Definitely.
To me, I feel like there is such a disconnect that from the community and what our youngsters really do need.
Yeah.
And I'm having a hard time kind of sort of wrap my head around, like, how do we get to this level, right?
Yeah.
But also I'm having a hard time kind of sort of figure out, like, what avenue that is, that they should take. There's a large population that we really don't know much about it, that is incarcerated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah. So and it's challenging. I don't know what you're thinking that is.
Yeah. It's especially a lot of the individuals. Some of the individuals have died.
Right.
Friends and family, that I know personally. And obviously, a lot of the individuals incarcerated are also the same thing.
Yeah.
Individuals that kind of grown up with.
Yeah.
And it is sad to see. It is very disappointing to see that it's come to this. But a lot of it, I wish I could explain, kind of what goes on to it. But obviously, when you're growing up in such a poor neighborhood, you don't have as many resources. Obviously, families. A lot of the families here, a lot of their parents are immigrants who are constantly working, who can't obviously have to try and build a roof over the head, food on the table. So they're maybe not constantly watching their kid. And it makes it difficult, and that's how they're able to kind of get into the life of the streets and when they're consuming drugs and so on and so forth. So it is a shame, and that's when it's upon the community. It's really upon the community to try and make a change in that sense. And I think we're kind of divided in this sense, essentially. Kind of what should we use our resources for? Should we try and protect the ones that we currently have under the shade right now? Or should we try and go out and focus on some of these? Well, some of the ones under the shade may kind of, slip away, and it becomes difficult. It's kind of that grasp, it's kind of like that tug of war, essentially, that's happening. And so I think it definitely takes, obviously, patience, and it also takes, being able to kind of relate to them, someone who kind of grew up in that lifestyle, whatever the case may be. Because a lot of individuals say, once you kind of do something bad, that's the end of it. When everyone makes mistakes,
Everyone makes mistakes.
Everyone makes mistakes, and everyone can repent from these mistakes. And there's always a comeback story.
Absolutely.
It's always possible. Absolutely. And so we have to be able to show them that. We have to be able to show the youth that they can always come back, that they can always go on and succeed, and that people love them and they have help here in their community.
I don't know how you feel about it, because certain parents do feel 𝐷𝐴 is another way of coping with what their youngsters going through.
Correct. Yeah.
For me, it really doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Somebody who almost grew up here, sleep 1 or 2 times, then completely that person has been taken to Somalia. Definitely. And now they're gonna they don't know how to cope with it.
Correct.
That kind of sort of I think that's another thing that's adding fuel to the fire. I feel like it.
Yeah, I think especially you hear this 𝐷𝐴, going back to try and learn your culture. A lot of the kids born here, it's a culture shock for them.
It is.
So when they go back, they don't know who they relate to.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're kind of out by themselves, and I've noticed that a lot of the individuals who do go back for 𝐷𝐴 and they do come back here to the U.S., they're essentially right back to where they were. there's not really much change. All that's really happened in that short time is they've improved their Somali because they're in Somalia the entire time. But besides that, there really isn't much of a change that I see. And so, yeah, it definitely kind of starts with, trying to talk to them while they're here, Don't trying to kind of, dupe them into having, forcing them to go back home. And like you mentioned, I think if there were, proper programs created, I think this would definitely help in keeping them focused on what the goal is. But I think we spend a lot of time telling them, you have to go to university.
Yeah.
That's not the case for some individuals. Some individuals, university isn't the way for them.
Absolutely.
Maybe they need to find something else to do.
Absolutely.
Whether it could be, becoming, like, let's say, going to trade school, becoming a mechanic or an electrician or a plumber. These are businesses in which not only can you run yourself, you kind of make your own hours, so you get to choose when you want to work, but also you can really kind of have a hands-on experience. You'll be spending a lot of time doing this work, which kind of keeps you away from some of these things. But I also think kind of not only learning about your culture, but also learning about your religion is very helpful in that sense, where it kind of keeps you very focused, kind of on the straight path, and that kind of blocks away a lot of the things. So I think maybe some of these things, if the community is able to kind of work together to be able to provide these, for the general population, I think it would be very helpful. But like I said, sometimes it is kind of very narrow and kind of kind of closed off, that it becomes difficult. A lot of the individuals who may have had a shaky past come, and they're, people are like kind of looking down upon them, and they feel a little scared in that sense. So I definitely think we need to be more open in that sense, for sure.
So where do you think the Somali community is headed from here on out?
So I think, from here on out, I think the Somali community could definitely do a better job in regards to looking after the youth. Being able to provide them with different opportunities, whether it's with local businessmen, or even working with different organizations, to try and show them some of the different opportunities, different avenues, different whatever the case may be that they could have, that they can see a future with, because you want to find what they're passionate about, and you want to kind of use that to influence them into going, kind of motivate them into doing what they love. And so it becomes very difficult in that sense. So I definitely think they need to be able to see a lot of different things for them to be able to kind of decide on what they want to do.
Now, when you were going through high school, did you know what your passion was?
Yeah. So, growing up, I've always wanted to be an astronaut. I wanted to, I want to go to the moon. I loved astronomy. And then it definitely changed. When I got older, I started, I love sports. And I was like, oh, man, I want to become an athlete. Unfortunately, that didn't work out. And now I'm like, okay, well, what's the next best thing? I can maybe work in the industry. And so I kind of have this goal, and I'm kind of continuously trying to chase it. Even though things may, I may tweak it a little bit, but it's something that I'm very passionate about, and that I'm going to continue trying to chase. And so I definitely think if the youth kind of had that something like that, I think it'd be easier for them to kind of have, a path to follow, for sure.
No, what you just said was very cool, right? You wanted to be something, but in reality, that didn't work out for you.
Correct.
So you were able to adapt, you were able to tweak, you were able to change.
Yeah.
Then finally, it's slowly going to your direction, and eventually where you wanted to head out. And I think those are the kind of things that we need to create for our youth.
For sure.
We need to definitely be hands-on. And hopefully we get to see that in the long run. Now, going to college, and was that part of the plan to chase what you wanted to be as far as the athlete and the sports industry and things like that?
Yeah. So
or the idea came halfway in college.
So I guess in high school, I always kind of seen after high school, what's the next progression? Going to university. It's what your parents tell you all the time, and so I just kind of seen, well, that's perfect. Sure, why not? I'm going to go to university, and I have, here are the list of things that I want to do. So I had a list of, 4 or 5 different majors that I was thinking about. One was accounting. The next one was computer science. The next one was, sports science. The next one was chemistry. And so I had all these, different majors that I was thinking about. And obviously the first 2 years, you're just taking a bunch of general education courses, right? So those first 2 years, I'm checking out some of these courses, looking at them, talking to individuals, who are in some of these majors, and essentially making a decision that way. And so I was able to kind of narrow it down. I started with one. I went to the next one, and then I finally decided on this is what I wanted to do, and that's what I stuck with.
That's very cool.
So
That's very
I
cool.
think they even said that the average college student switches his or her major about 4 times.
That is true. That is
so
true.
you know, it
That is
happens with everyone, and it's okay if you don't know what you want to do immediately. You know.
See, that is the thing that I feel about in college. In other countries, that you straight go to your majors. You really don't spend enough time.
Correct. Yeah.
Looking around, because that's, I mean, you know, college is a business first.
It is.
Right?
It is. It is. Yeah.
And I think right now there is a shift on that. People feel like, okay, hey, we really don't have to spend 2 years finding out what we really wanted to do.
Yeah.
In the meantime, you know, packing up all these student loans and things like that.
Correct. Yeah.
So now there is a different programs out there that who are kind of sort of steer you into your major. Things that you really wanted to do.
Yeah.
Whether that's hands-on. But if you really think about it, that those are like those are not a day-to-day task that you really use in day-to-day life.
Yeah, and I've noticed a lot of individuals mention even after they get their degree, a lot of the things that they learn about their job, they learn on the job. You know, it's good to have a nice little background essentially. So that's what I recommend a lot of individuals, especially here in Columbus. You know, if you want to go to a prestigious university like the Ohio State University, you also have to definitely think about, like you said, it's a business first. You have to think about how costly it is. You know, can I do 2 years maybe at Columbus State, you know, take my general education courses there. And there's programs where they have where you can go from Columbus State to Ohio State. So, you know, you can think about that, you know, going to maybe a smaller university or whatever the case may be, you know, finishing up some of your easy courses before trying to go to that bigger university. But like you mentioned, there's also other programs. There's also other kind of programs that are offered, you know, all over the state or even the country where you can essentially just go straight, you know, I want to do nursing. Well, you don't have to take 2 years of undergrad at Ohio State and then go to the nursing program. You can go to another nursing program here where you begin immediately with a lot of your nursing classes, whatever the case may be. So,
absolutely. And that takes about 2.5 years or so.
Yeah, exactly.
And one final thing, you know, for somebody who is in high school listening to this podcast, listen to you right now, what advice would you give them that is having a hard time which avenue to take in life?
So I would just say, you know, keep your options open. Even if you don't know exactly what you want to do, think about, you know, how you can, you know, what's kind of the easiest path to go into which one. What do you think you'd enjoy more long term? And obviously talk to individuals, you know, who are doing some of those things. If you don't know someone, try and find someone. You know, you can connect with people from all around the world, so on and so forth. Try and find out more information. But yeah, continue seeking knowledge. You know, you're never too young or never too old to seek knowledge. And just enjoy your youth. You're young. Enjoy yourself for sure.
Well, we'll leave it at that. Enjoy youth. Enjoy young.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.